Welcome to Food Truck Crazy. This will be my first video in the channel here. What I'm hoping to do is to put up videos on a semi-regular basis that'll kind of show you how in a DIY sort of way how to maintain your own food truck. We'll also have videos up on how you would maybe start one, how you would find different events, some of the setup procedures and takedown, as well as some of the things that you can do to take care of yourselves, because ultimately things break, things wear out, and you need to know how to fix and repair it. And so when I run up across those things, I'm going to record that and I'm going to put it out there for everyone to see. I hope that the information that I share is helpful and others will be able to share. Because as I've gone out into looking for this kind of information, I found that it wasn't available or it was hard to find, kind of like it was a big secret. I think if we are able to share with everybody, everybody can learn from everyone and everyone can do well. I am no expert and I'm definitely not a professional on many things that I do, so there are probably going to be better ways, and even as I recorded this video I found a better way to drill out the stainless steel, and I've included the link below. So it's at about this point I'm going to start to show how I replaced the faucet or upgraded the faucet in my little food truck here, and I hope you join me through the journey. Thank you for watching and we'll see you at the end. We've got a metal insert, and the metal insert is used for washing hands. You need two separate sinks, one to wash your dishes in and one also to wash your hands, and so in order to meet code we've had to add a second sink, and the only way to do it because of the size of the cart is to have a metal insert that was created. So where we run into issues is when we try to reach in here, pull the sink out, it's hitting up against the actual tap itself, so it makes removal fairly difficult, especially if you've got some water or fluid in there. After removing this sink, I took a look underneath to see if I could reuse some of the different items that were there, and I noticed that there's no way I was going to be able to reuse this T-joint just because of how well it had been clamped in place. I also noticed that it's going to be a little bit more work to get up inside than originally had scheduled for, and so I went and talked to the boss and said, it's going to be a little bit longer because I'm going to have to pull everything out of underneath from the food truck. So here I am, I'm taking a look and I'm starting to cut the items out, and I'm starting to use my cutters so I can actually start to pull the hot water tank, the gray tank, off to the right hand side, and also later on I'll have to pull out the freshwater tank as well to get everything nice and removed so I can get my body up inside that small little space. I am using a metal plate to try and keep all my bolts and screws and stuff together. Inside, underneath there's actually a magnet, and so the magnet is really good for keeping things from rolling away. Try to be as organized as I can because I usually am not. Look, it's glued in place, so I'm gonna have to pull this part off. Might hit with a little bit of heat again. Just want to be careful not to melt the plastic. Or might be easier to unscrew it from the bottom. Try that instead. Here, it's a gray water tank. So at this point I need to dry up some of the water, and I kind of take a look up inside to see if I can get up there and reach to unscrew the attachments onto the tap, and I realize that it's still too tight next to the fresh water tank and where I need to actually get myself into. So it's a very tight space. You do want to be careful because there's thin copper tubing that those are spinning onto, so if you do unscrew them, you want to make sure they are supported. So here I am unscrewing the side support for the fresh water tank.
From the top of the sink, this is a freshwater fill. So I need to reach down in there, and it's silicone, so I break the silicone seal and pull it out just so I can remove the freshwater tank from below. I've got it out. As long as it's not glued in place, I should be able just to pull it down and pull it out from underneath. A little gentle persuasion to see if this is I can break the screen. Pretty solid. The trick is to go slow and methodical. If you look underneath here, you'll notice it isn't too hard. So here there's a screw. There's another screw on the other side of the axle. So I need to undo those two, and then I can pull the block out of the way. Should make dropping the water tank a lot easier.
So now that I've got the block and I can remove it, it's time to remove the fresh water tank. After I have the fresh water tank out and safely off to the side, it's time to go back inside and lay on my back and unscrew the PEX connections that are on the bottom of the taps on the top there. At this point I try to take a pair of pliers and unscrew the two brass fittings, but I'm having some problems reaching in there. Not a lot of room to move the pliers back and forth, and so after a little bit of time I go to my toolbox and I grab a wrench with a ratcheting box end, which makes removal of the second one a lot easier. It only gives me a few degrees of movement, but it's enough to loosen it up. It's finally time to unpack the faucet. It's a Kohler with a vegetable sprayer attachment to it. After I get all the items out of the box and unpackaged, it's time to also clear off the rest of the food items. I'm going to start drilling here pretty quick. I'm going to be getting metal shavings everywhere, and I want to make sure that it doesn't get into my food product. Use a towel to cover up the areas to which it may go.
I fit. I think the hole's going to be too small. Pull it out. Guarantee it's actually too small. This won't fit through. Just need to drill that out just a little bit.
What I'm trying to show here is if you ever used a hole saw drill bit and you've already got a hole pre-drilled, it's very difficult to drill it larger because the starting of the hole really depends on the drill bit in the middle. So what I'm doing is I'm screwing in a smaller hole saw into the actual one inside, and it's going to work as a guide for me to stop it from wandering all over the place. It's gotten fairly late in the evening and it's time to make a quick run into town. It's been fairly cold over here the last month or so. It's been about minus 30 as you can see a speedometer reading here. And so I went to a couple different places, to the Home Depot and to the Lowe's stores, to find myself some parts that I could use to continue on within the building process. I had to buy some brass fittings and a T-fitting and a few other items which I'll continue to use in the rest of the build. At this point here, I'm cleaning away all the old silicone. This is where I had the water fill.
So the way this works is there's a handle that you pull. It's for vegetable sprayers, what they call it, and a hose on the bottom here. You'll see it actually comes in and out. What you want to do is you want to be able to have the hose actually be weighted down, so when you put it back in, that it goes back into place nicely, but also this comes good and solid. And so what you have is, in most of the kits will have a weighted kit. There's going to be a hoop that you put on before you actually attach this. Probably should have been attached earlier. What you can do is you can put this on the weighted end of your hose. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it, instead of just right on the bottom here because there's not any pressure, is I'll just put it on just kind of the top edge, just so that there's always just a little bit of weight holding us down, and that'll actually help to pull that and hold that into place when there's a weight on it. Okay? So inside of the kit there's also 3 pieces that helps attach it to the other side. So what I'll do is I'll actually put this through the sink, and I'll put this up, the plastic piece towards the top with the metal ring underneath, and this spins up just up the collar here, and then there's some screws that I'll just tighten up to try and hold and lock it in place. In here and clean up the silicone for the drain spout, which I'll put back in later, and I've cleaned up the edges here so they're nice and clean. I am going to use some silicone on the bottom here to try and seal this, to help this hold it in place a little bit so it doesn't kind of spin on me, as well as using the locking mechanism and everything that's inside the kit.
Okay, to disconnect the collar hose, I shouldn't have put it together to begin with. What you need to do is, you see on this one here, you got the 2 things on the side. What you'll do is you'll squeeze it together and just pull it apart. If you do it any other way, very difficult. But if you do it the right way, you look on the internet, or you follow the video here, it just comes apart just that easy.
What I'm explaining here is that I'm not going to be using Teflon tape on the actual brass fitting. I'm going to rely on the rubber washer, or the rubber seal that's actually inside of the hose here. If you've ever changed oil filter on a vehicle, it's much the same. What you'll want to do is actually just spin down the brass fitting until you just get in contact with the rubber sealing surface there. And after you've got that connection, you're going to take a wrench or your hand, but in this case I'm going to use a wrench. I'll only go about an extra 1/3 to 1/2 turn. And by doing that, you ensure that you don't cut the rubber sealing surface, and you've got a nice waterproof connection. Since I had gone this far, on the underside inside the cart where the water tanks were, there was quite a bit of rust. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to sand it away and then use some Rust-Oleum paint to bring back its finish and maybe give it a few more years.
Alright, what we're going to do is run just a little bit of caulk underneath of the edge here, just so that we can get a seal around it, and it'll help hold hold it in place. Hopefully stop it from turning. So we're kind of liberal. I can wipe it up. You do want to make sure you wipe this up though. It's kind of a mess. I've got a helper here to give me a hand. I'm going to crawl underneath. I want to make sure she holds it in the right position. Alright, so that's probably lots. Okay, you want to hold this? Now that it's in place, I'm just going to caulk around the edge and give it kind of a nice seal. It's best to go all the way around if you can, without stopping. Finger. Come all the way around with a nice seal. Moisten my finger and just finish it off. I'm going to cut out some pecs here. Cut it a little bit long, maybe a little bit of waste. But the nice thing is I'm not going to have to be reaching inside to try and do the crimping. There's actually a proper tool to use this, and I'll probably put up in the video. But I don't have that tool, and so years ago I did a bunch of irrigation stuff around the property, and these were the clamps or pliers that we used to put the tubing onto all the fittings for the sprinkler system. And so this works fine for what it is that I'm doing here. And I'll be using these as to cut the PEX pipe. It's probably the easiest method that I've used before. They're just flat blade, and you just push it through and it cuts the PEX pipe very nice and easy. Just want to make sure I got more than enough. Rocking motion and cut. Make sure that the edges are nice and straight. To attach the PEX pipe and the brass fitting together, these Sherlock pinch clamps, and they've been pretty successful for me. Show you the first one. Put this on the pipe. Slide it down. Just pulls in. Towards the end, remembering that your actual fitting's that long, because you want to try and make it so that the clamp is pinching in the middle here, at least over one of these two ridges here, to give yourself a good positive seal. Push it forward. Try to keep my hands out of the way. And just going to give it a good hard squeeze. And that'll hold. There we go, she's nice and freshly painted, and it's time to start putting everything back together again.
So at about this point, I've gone through and shown you how to replace the tap. The video is getting quite long, and so the rest of the items will just be still photos. What I'm showing here is I've got the hot water tank back in with the gray tank off to the right hand side, and tucked up just in behind the hot water tank is a freshwater tank reinstalled. On the right hand side there's the pump. I've reconnected all the lines using the PEX pipe and the quick clamps. We've got cold water feed going straight across the top there, and right in behind the hose you see there's a red on-off valve. I put that in there to allow for easier winterizing of the trailer once come to the end of the season. Just up in the top you'll see the sink. I've got a Fernco connection. What it is, it's like a plumber's connection. There's a Fernco connection that I've connected the drain from the sink into the gray tank below. I couldn't reuse the old pipe that was there because it was just too brittle and too cracked, and there's no way to really create a good seal. What you'll notice, there's a couple clamps on there that you spin it across. I had to cut the old drain and then use the Fernco connection, and it just allowed me to clamp onto it. After that, I've gone to a 1 1/4 inch hose and just kind of allowed it to drain into the gray tank. After about this point, everything's been buttoned up. I tested the taps and made sure there's no leaks, and if there was any leaks, I just kind of retightened up the clamps just to make sure, and then filled it all the way to the top, and then winterized it. I'll walk through winterizing the food truck in a later video, potentially the end of next year, and show you guys how to do that. If you've made it this far into the video, I'd really like to thank you for watching the whole thing. If you're interested in videos like this, where you're able to find some information on how to do things on your own, or you're interested in how maybe you might start a food truck, how you find different events, some of the things that you'll need to know if you're starting out, if you're brand new, or you just want to kind of watch maybe some of the adventures that we'll post up online, I would ask you to subscribe. I hope to get videos out once every week or two at the beginning, and then as I become more familiar with the process and how to develop and generate these videos, get them up more often. I do look forward to hearing from everyone, and have yourselves a good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be. Bye-bye. Oh yeah, one last thing. In the bottom, in the description, you will see some affiliate links to Amazon. If Amazon's your thing, if you are a Prime member, or you just have an addiction like I do, I will have some links to some of the items I did use in this video. They won't cost you any extra, but Amazon's going to be real nice and help me out so I can help you out and provide more great videos like this.